I want to start out today with Wildfire with a quote, a movie quote. And if you can get this movie quote, awesome to you. It goes like this. What's on your mind, monkey butt? So some of you may have heard that movie quote, and some of you I know have watched it hundreds of times. I know I have. And what is on your mind today? What is the desire of your heart today? What are you focusing on? If you're at your job, you're focusing on your job, or some of you are at your job focusing on the other things that you need to get done at the house or at church or at the camp or wherever you may be. Where is your desire? Because if your desire isn't on Christ, we're going to have an issue, okay? And I want to go back into time. We're going to paint a picture of it being dark. You're in shackles. You're in jail for something you did not do that was wrong, okay? Well, at the time, basically, it was wrong because we're talking about Paul. And the reason Paul was in jail is because he was proclaiming the news of Jesus. And it wasn't that it was against the law, but it was against the law because they made the law. Anyways, it's a whole nother discussion. You're in jail and you decide under all these trials and situation in your life that you're going to write a letter to some of the churches and individuals to help them with their situation. Now, a lot of people, and I know this for a fact, a lot of people would get hung up on themselves being in jail. Oh my life is ruined. It's over. But Paul didn't take that approach. His approach was, how can I help somebody else who may end up in this situation just like me? So he's writing these letters to the churches. And today we're in Ephesians chapter 4. We're going to start at verse 17. We're talking about the desire today. What is your desire? What are you hooked on? What are you trying to accomplish? Or what are desires in your flesh that your flesh have that you need to rip apart and get rid of? I heard somebody say months ago that they burn all of the bridges behind them because they don't want to turn around. There's no way back. They have to keep moving forward to get across bridges and railways and whatever it is that they're going through, the obstacle. The idea of that analogy is that anything is in the past, leave it. You can't change the past. Only thing you could change is the present and the future. So if you keep focusing on that, things can change for the better. So what kind of desire are you dealing with that you need to break apart and disintegrate it from behind you so you can move forward in your walk with Christ? Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 17, says, "This I say, therefore, testify in the Lord. Urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called." This is a scary proposition. Just this first line in verse 1. We're going to skip to 17 here in a minute. "I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called." If you're a trustee, if you're a pastor, if you're a worship leader, if you're a deacon, if you're somebody in a higher position in the church, walk in a worthy manner. Are you walking that way? Because if you are not, you're doing an injustice to all of Christianity. Not only that, but to Jesus. Because when people come up to see you and they see you a certain way on Sunday and Wednesday, but then outside of the church, you're a completely different human being. That is hypocritical. That makes people leave the church in a heartbeat. You need to walk worthy of the calling to which you've been called. Wow, just in verse 1. So in verse 2, it says, "With all humility, gentleness, with patience, bearing one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace." That is hard for a lot of us. Some of us, even me. Sometimes you just get those people, and you know who I'm talking about. You just know, okay? And it takes every amount of strength that you have not to get mad, angry, jealous, eager to do some things that you know you shouldn't do, calling names, whatever it may be. We know that is sinful and that we should not act upon those things that come into our lives. But sometimes that temptation overtakes us, which turns into sin, which turns into death, as it says in the book of James. What we need to do is rely on Christ. That is all we need to do. I mean, when Jesus came, what did he do? He relied on God. He lived his life in abundance with Christ, with God. So we're going to skip here the verse 17. Trying to get down here. Verse 17 says, "Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do, and the fertility of their minds. The Gentiles were, we're just going to say, the sinners of the day, okay? They are darkened, verse 18, in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to their hardness of heart. They have become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to the practice every kind of impurity. Yes, this even means homosexuality, transgenderism, whatever you want to say. I will be bold and say it. It is against Christianity. It is against Jesus. Jesus does not want anything to do with this. This is not called by God. We can go through other verses and other chapters that designate the same thing, but it is wrong. Straight up. It is immoral. Verse 20, but that is not the way you learned Christ, exclamation mark. Assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth is in Jesus, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. You remember doing that. I know you do. You remember the way you used to be and who you are now because of what transpired at a youth event, a conference, church camp, in your bedroom, and watching a show, whatever it may be, in the church, whatever it may be, you had who you were, and Christ changed you to who you are now. Now, the other question is, who are you presently? Is your desire resorting back to your old life? Is your flesh coming out and trying to take over your body anymore? What is it that you're dealing with today? I can name off a bunch of sins. I'm more than happy to do that. Let's just do it. Drugs, alcohol, lust. We'll go deeper. Porn, having sex outside of marriage, thinking terrible thoughts about people that anger you, even cursing, living a lifestyle that is not of God, homosexuality, things like that. The list can go on if I wanted to get a little deeper, but you understand the concept. The deceitful desires of our hearts are that. It is so easy to sin. So easy to sin. The hardest thing that you're going to do in your life is trying to rely on Christ. Because temptation is so in your face every single day. Like right now. I mean, you may be watching this video, if you're still watching this video. You may be watching this and at the same time getting all these little bitty advertisements on the side that you want to click on. Everything is in your face. Social media is in your face. Sometimes when we read things that people leave on comment sections, it gets us mad, it gets us upset, it gets us sad, it gets us down. We are being bombarded every single day with temptation. And there's nothing, to be quite honest, there's nothing wrong with temptation. The problem is when you give into that temptation and it becomes a sin. Right? That's what it says in the book of James. When we fall to temptation, we sin, we do the act of the temptation. That is the sin. And that is why that, ultimately, Christ sends us to hell. But more ultimately than that, we choose to go there. We choose to sin every single day. We choose to click on that website. We choose to say that about our best friend. We choose to this. We choose to that. It's up to us. We are the ones that sin every single day. And ultimately, we send ourselves to hell. Verse 23. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self created after the likeness of God in the true righteousness and holiness. We're going to stop right there this evening. I know it's getting a little long here, almost 10 minutes. I want you to be aware that the desire of your heart should be on Christ, not your sin. The desire of your heart should be on Christ and not your sin. We need to burn those bridges behind us because we can never go back. You don't ever want to go back. You always want to move forward. There's a saying, if you're not the lead dog, your view never changes. And that is so true. We need to be leading our lives with Christ in the focus, directing our paths on where to go. We don't want to be a follower of somebody else who's leading us down the wrong path line. What we need to do is dive into Scripture daily, not weekly, but daily. Because if you don't know this, there's no way you're going to be able to fight it outside of there. And don't think that there's not a fight against evil and spiritual warfare, because there is every single day, just All you really have to do is put your phone down, put your Bible down, sit in silence, and I guarantee you something will happen to you. Whether it's a phone call, whether it's a notification, a game coming up, whatever it may be, you're going to be bombarded every single day. So I want you to understand that your life needs to be centered around Christ, and your desire of your heart needs to be on Christ. Because if your heart isn't centered on Christ, the only other thing it's centered on is the world. And you don't need to look like the world, talk like the world, and live like the world if Christ were to come back today. Don't send yourself to hell sooner than you need to. Change the way that you're living. You can't be two-faced. I was that way for a long time, and I know I've said that a couple times. You know, when you came to church, hey brother, hey sister, how you doing? Yeah, I'm having a great day, awesome. And then when church was over, oh, thank goodness now I can be myself. Hey, let's go do this and that. We can't do that. We are a new creature. And if you're falling back into those little desires that you used to have, you need to stop. This is your warning. Knock it off. Stop what you're doing. Move forward. Burn the bridges and see what victories Jesus has for you. What is the desire of your heart today? What is the desire?